Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in today. I'm Bethany Poole, the editor-in-chief of Think with Google, and we are backstage at Google Marketing Live at the San Jose Convention Center, and I'm joined by Laura Beaudin, a partner at Bain, to talk about how leading brands are using time to create better customer connections. Thanks for being here today, Laura.
It's my pleasure. I'm very excited to be here.
For those who don't know much about Bain, tell us a little bit about the company and what your role is there.
Absolutely. So Bain Company is a management consulting firm, and our goal is to be able to help companies with their toughest business problems. And what we found actually over the last decade or so is that marketing is one of those bigger business problems. And so we've been developing perspectives on the kinds of things, the kinds of insights, the kinds of capabilities that we can help marketers build in order to be able to create great outcomes for their companies. And so as a partner in the firm, and actually also our global lead of our marketing excellence practice, my job is to figure out what are some of those secrets to success for marketers who are doing a great job, and how can we help other marketers follow that path.
Wonderful. And I think that's what I want to talk about today, the recent report that you led with Google about surveying 1,700 marketers globally about what their challenges are and what they're finding. Can you tell us a little bit about the report and what you learned from it?
Yes. So this report is actually a continuation in a series of studies that we've done over the course of the last decade or so to really be able to put some data behind these lessons from marketing leaders. So what we wanted to be able to do is understand, for marketers who are growing sales and growing share, are there specific capabilities, specific practices, specific activities that they're doing that are different than everybody else? And if they are, and it turns out there actually are quite a number of them that are statistically significantly different, how do we turn those into playbooks that other marketers can follow? And we had the pleasure of working with Google on the latest iteration of this research, where we again identified a few of the pillars of the things that marketing leaders are doing differently.
Can you tell us a little bit about what those pillars are? I know they're very related to assistance and time.
They are, and so and this research has evolved over time. We found years ago that the marketing leaders were doing a very better job of getting out ahead of digital trends, getting out ahead of being able to organize their data in a way that they could use it to come up with insights around audience and targeting. But really interestingly, in this latest version of the report, what we found is that the leaders have found a way to be able to get time on their side. And so what we're seeing is that it's not enough anymore actually to know who it is that you want to be talking to. It's actually more valuable to also be thinking about when you want to talk to them. And so the things that the leaders are doing in order to capitalize on that is not only thinking about who is the best audience, but also picking up the signals that they can get from digital marketing, from digital data, to know when the right time to trigger a message would be. A really good example of this came from a cold medicine manufacturer that we interviewed through the process of the report. And their insight was actually that they found they built the best brand advocates for their product if someone would actually try their medication in the first 2 days that they were starting to feel sick. And so they realized that if they could get their message out there at that particular moment, they would be able to not only be able to create short-term conversion, but they would be building a great brand advocate down the line. And so what they started to think about doing was harnessing the signals that they could get through Google Analytics, through the search traffic that they had, or also on WebMD, to understand when somebody is trying to tell them that they're feeling sick. And if they could pick up on those messages, trigger their message at that particular moment in time, they had a much better chance of creating a great outcome. And in that instance, it actually doesn't matter whether you're in their typical target audience. They've been able to broaden the funnel and get people at that right moment in time, which matters just as much as whether or not they're the right target.
So they're signaling their intent and what they're looking for, and you're going, okay, they're about to be sick. We need to get our message in front of them immediately.
Yeah, because you could be the perfect match for the audience target, but if you're not sick, you don't care. And you may not be a perfect match in that audience, but if you are sick, that message will really resonate.
You guys also found some interesting things about sequencing and how that plays a role in what the leading marketers are doing and how they've evolved.
Yeah, this is another sort of element of time that we found to be quite interesting for the marketing leaders. Marketing leaders had started to think about the sequence of messages that they're putting in front of their customers and organizing them in a way, knowing what the path that somebody has taken, that just makes it feel much more like a customer conversation. And so rather than having separate groups thinking about performance marketing or e-commerce activities and someone else thinking about brand messages, what we found from a global sporting goods company was a really powerful example of thinking about how to put those messages in sequence so that you started with the most powerful brand messages first. And if those messages created traffic to the website or sales, there was no need then to go to any of the promotional messages. And you could work your way through that sequence in order to be able to make sure you were creating good brand and loyalty effects as well as short-term sales goals.
That's wonderful. You talk a little bit about the strategies to make these connections. That last one you talked about, it's really about integrating the different groups. What do you recommend for marketers who want to get on this path and start moving forward here?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, because one of the things that has continued to surprise me, actually, as I talk to marketers, we work with many marketers in different industries, is that there tends to be a little bit of analysis paralysis sometimes when it comes to trying new things, that either marketers are waiting for the right technology to be installed or the right data to get together to be able to illuminate some insight. But time and again, what we found to be the best strategy for anyone wanting to go down this path is to just start doing stuff. And so in many cases, you can take small amounts of data, try to form that into a hypothesis of, well, I'm wondering whether or not this might work. And just by trialing it, you're able to both build the results story and the momentum that gives you the permission to keep going, but also starts to identify some of the bottlenecks within the organization that you might need to iron out. So one of those big things is figuring out what other parts of the organization do I need to get on board in order to be able to keep going. And we heard a great story from a hospitality company who did exactly that. Started small in terms of the things that they could control, but as they had great success stories from the digital marketing efforts that they had done that were more customer-centric and thinking about the journey, they could take those to other parts of the organization to be able to get permission to use more data that would make their targeting and their ability to pick up on those signals even better going forward. And it's interesting, there's almost as much marketing to do inside an organization as there is to do externally in order to get down this path.
I love that insight that everybody has a hypothesis and you just have to kind of test it and start there, but every marketing team has some idea of where they may be connecting with the customer. You also talk about you can create all of these connections, but it still matters what the message is. That still has a huge part to play.
Yes, I mean it's one of the things that I having watched this space for a long time. There is no shortage of headlines around the science of marketing, and at the end of the day, I think marketing is most powerful when it's a balance of art and science, or we like to say the math and the magic. And I think one of the things that we're discovering is that time and again, the leaders are also finding ways to make sure that they're embracing the creative elements as much as they're embracing the science around the data and all of the technology and tools, because it's the marriage of those things that create campaigns that break through, that cause somebody who's sick and not paying attention to actually get a message that resonates, that causes them to change their behavior.
And I think you had great results to talk about how these leading marketers were actually performing. When you look at metrics, how do they compare to everybody else in the industry in terms of the results that they see?
Yeah, so by definition, we've called the leaders those who are growing sales and growing share. And when you look at the averages across that, they tend to be growing sales and share consistently around the world, actually, more than 5% in both categories. And there's differences and nuances because different industry verticals are naturally growing at different rates. But I think what's powerful about that is that often people think that it's only the digital natives or a brand new company that's on a very steep growth trajectory that we're looking at. But in fact, no, there's actually a wide variety of companies who've been able to onboard these techniques and are starting to see really good growth.
So I'm sure our audience is curious about what the right first step is. For those of you who are just tuning in, I'm Bethany Poole, the editor-in-chief of Think with Google, and I'm sitting here with Laura Beaudin, partner at Bain, talking about the latest report that they conducted, talking to 1,700 marketers globally about what the leaders are doing and what the right best practices are. So for marketers who want to capitalize on time and using that as a competitive advantage, what's the right first step?
I think what we often find is, getting together a small group of people who can help to put on paper what some of those hypotheses are is really as simple as it gets. There's more to it than in terms of being able to build a campaign, but being able to start thinking about what are those ideas and what are those insights that we might already have or have the data to be able to go see that allows us to try to get time on our side. So whether it's determining if there are some of those timing signals that we should be picking up on, whether it's trying to automate some of the things that we're already doing so that we can carve out more time to look for the insights. We've heard that those are very common practices. It doesn't have to be a top-down mandate. It actually can be quite organic, and as it builds momentum, it can scale from there.
I love some of the examples that you have in the report. They're just really interesting to see what the insights that these brands found and then how they pivoted their strategy. What was the biggest aha for you as you were conducting all of this research?
Yeah, so we've looked at this for a while, so there's a number of things that probably aren't that surprising anymore. But I think it is that how to get started is still the number one question. There's no shortage of data out there at this point, and so I think a lot of marketers are not necessarily feeling that they have the tools that they need at their fingertips to start doing some of this. But in fact, actually, they do, and you don't have to wait and you don't have to invest in machine learning and AI to be able to get that flywheel going. It's about taking a customer data set, taking some of the insights you already have, and starting to think about what could we do differently to test these hypotheses.
That's great. This is so fascinating, Laura, and I know I have a bunch of questions from the audience. So if you don't mind, I'm going to switch over and let them pepper you with questions. So our first one is from Amy from LinkedIn. Thank you, Amy. How can I empower the non-analyst on my team to feel more comfortable digging into the data and identifying insights?
Great question, Amy, and I think it actually goes back to the concept we were just talking about of great marketing today is not just about the analytics. It's about the balance of the math and the magic. And I think we've seen lots of great ideas come from people who have less of an analytic background in developing what some of those hypotheses are. A lot of folks, can observe what they've seen customers do. They can talk to customers. They don't have to always be looking in the data to come up with those new ideas. And so it can be very empowering, actually, for other members of your organization to be part of those brainstorming sessions or design thinking kind of events to get their ideas on the table as well. And then they can get some help to explore what some of the data might be to start proving out those hypotheses.
We have another question from AJ on YouTube, which I think builds really well on what you were saying in terms of the right first step and looking at those hypotheses that you have. What free or easy to use attribution tools would you recommend marketers to use to effectively measure their success once they've started down this path?
Excellent question, AJ, and I'm sure we could do an entire session on attribution. I think one of the things that we've consistently found with this just get going kind of mentality around trying new things is that you can very easily in those tests build in the controls you need so that the attribution you have is actually built into the test itself. You don't have to have a very sophisticated, big, heavy attribution model in order to tease things out. You can just be quite mindful around what are the things that you're going to change in either an ABC test or a multivariate test that will help to give you confidence around the hypothesis that you have, the things that you're varying in order to be able to understand it, and then the controls. So that test in and of itself becomes quite contained and also can give you the confidence that what you're seeing is ready to be scaled.
So it's not even using new tools, it's just taking what you have and using them very strategically.
Yeah, I mean, there's some new techniques and things that can be added to that in order to accelerate tests. I mean, we've seen tremendous results with our clients using multivariate testing when historically they've been limited to either A/B or ABC. So it just speeds things up when you have a big enough data set. But it doesn't have to be fancy analytics. It's just in setting up the test in a way that you can be truly piecing out what's the results.
Great. We have a question from Steve from Twitter. It seems like many marketers are still stuck focusing on demographics when trying to find their audience. How do we get out of that mindset to think bigger about reaching new customers?
Wonderful question. I really, that kind of speaks really at the core of one of the things that's been quite consistent in all of our marketing leaders research over the years. Time and time again, we've found that the leaders have actually reorganized the culture and the mindset and even the operations within the marketing organization to be more about the customer and their journey and the lifetime value of that customer as opposed to the individual campaigns or brand components that historically marketing was built upon. And as you adjust that mindset to think more about what is that overall customer journey and how do I want to have a conversation over time, it actually gives you a lot of interesting things and behaviors that you can look at from your existing customers that might be good suggestions for the messaging and kinds of things that you're suggesting for customers that are newer. And so it's that mindset shift around thinking about what is my customer thinking that can be quite empowering. And of course, there's definitely going to be ways that you can segment those customers in different demographic groups, but it's not just the demographics, it's even more what their behaviors are, more what their values are that you can tease out with additional types of research that then help you not only be able to get people who look like the right people, but also you can make sure that you're delivering the right message that's really going to resonate for the things that they care about.
The behavior example that you gave earlier with the cold medicine. You don't
Exactly.
necessarily have to have an audience demographic there. It's really about the behavior that they're indicating, I need your medicine now.
Exactly, and working with other clients in the consumer electronics space. Again, demographics doesn't necessarily matter if what you need is to make sure that they're enjoying all of the features and benefits of the product that they've bought. And you can put demographics aside and say, well, if this is somebody who hasn't actually ever even turned on this feature, let's make sure that our marketing to those people are giving them the opportunity to experience the things that we know cause delight. And there's ways that you can marry all of this together so that marketing isn't then just about targeting all the time. It's about actually having an ongoing and relevant conversation.
Wonderful. We have a question from Samantha from Facebook. How often should I be refreshing my marketing metrics and dashboards to make sure my team is responding quickly enough to new trends?
Yes, another good element of time. So thank you for that question, Samantha. We did find in the latest research that marketing leaders were refreshing their data at a minimum weekly. And that varies a little bit around the world, just in terms of the sophistication of some tools that have been employed. But it is that constant experimentation, that constant optimization that we've found to be one of the characteristics that marketing leaders have. And that ability to be able to monitor those trends and act quickly and be ready for things that customers are saying to you is a key to success. For that cold medication, we keep coming back to that one, but for that cold medication company, if they missed their 2-day window, it wasn't going to work. And so making sure that you're being able to pick up on those moments really mattered.
Great. We have a question from Matt from Twitter. Thank you, Matt. It sounds like creatives, not just analysts and executives, should be thinking about how data can push their work to be better. How can I get my creative teams to see that data is their friend?
Well, data, is definitely everyone's friend. And I think, the way that we've described some of the testing that can be set up and the hypotheses around customers can be friendly to both those who sort of feel like they're right brain as well as those who feel like they're left brain. And where I've seen this be very powerful is actually bringing those people together so that they can share their varied experiences and perspectives and then think together, maybe led by somebody who has more of that analytic mindset, to then structure the logic behind, okay, if we believe that it's actually going to matter to be able to capture somebody in that 2-day window, what's the data that we need to gather in order to be able to prove whether or not that works? And so, then I think we've seen in many instances that being able to show that great results story that is based in data is an unlock that allows those creatives to be able to come up with the next idea and the next idea and be bolder in the things that they're testing, always coming back to the fact that we need to measure what's working and what's not, but that practice can then iterate and give everybody the opportunity to come up with really new and innovative ideas.
When you get with that data, you're going to get to see the insights that will be the next, that will inform the next creative campaign or creative idea.
Right, and like any good brainstorming session, you want to have a little bit of fodder and inspiration, but even if it doesn't emerge from the data itself, because maybe you haven't tried something that is more innovative or kind of pushes the envelope more in the past, it can help spur some ideas of what would happen if we were to do something bolder.
Wonderful. We have 2 final questions because I know, Laura, you have to go to another panel here today. A question from Mauricio from YouTube. Can you tell us which resources or industry leaders that you admire most and learn from?
Oh, an excellent question, Mauricio. Thank you for that. I think there's inspiration that can come from many different pockets, whether it's across verticals, and it's not just all of the brand names that get thrown about. So I'm, going to evade the question a little bit because I think there's great practices that are happening in many different companies, and instead, I think it's those who have really embraced this mindset of constant iteration and thinking about what we can do next to really be able to excite and delight our customers. And that can show up in an insurance company, that can show up in a media company, it can show up in a retailer, it can show up in B2B. And that idea of really putting the customer first truly in what your marketing activities are is what I admire. And I think is also what I look for in terms of companies that understand where the marketing organization should be going. And I think it's CMOs who have really embraced that idea that they can be the curators of that customer conversation that I think are kind of going places and will take their organizations to that leadership level where they're growing sales and growing share.
Wonderful. Well, last and final question, Laura. We're halfway through 2018. You've talked a lot about, in your report, the opportunities you see for marketers. What is the thing that you're most excited about from now until the end of the year in terms of opportunities that marketers and our audience today should be seizing?
Yeah, great question. There is so much going on in marketing these days with transparency and privacy and your data and everything. I think a lot of it comes together in a way which is a bit of a call to action for marketers to really try to create that balance between the math and the magic in a way that we haven't really been paying as much attention to for the last few years as everyone's been trying to assemble a very strong data set and all the technology. I think we're maybe entering a moment of more of that brand and emotional connection renaissance that marketing has historically embraced more. And so I'm excited to be able to see where marketers kind of push themselves to new levels in order to be able to ensure that they're really actually building that brand resonance with their customers. What I see more often is the leaders talking about how to build customer lifetime value instead of just immediate ROI, which is exciting to me because that's about really creating the balance of the math and the magic.
This has been a fascinating conversation, Laura. Thank you so much for your time today. For everybody out in the audience, I encourage you to download the report. You can find it on Think with Google, and I'm sure we have put a link to it in the comments below. But thank you for tuning in today, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.